Good morning, folks.
Good evening.
Welcome, folks, to the 4th of October Aries Working Group call. This is a Hyperledger call, and so the antitrust policy and the code of conduct are in effect. There are links to those in the agenda. The agenda is linked in the chat. Of course, you can find it on the wiki as well. You're welcome to make any changes that are useful, including adding yourself to the attendees list or anything else that is useful. Is there anyone that would like to introduce themselves during our call today, whether you've been here before or not, but would like to introduce yourself? All right, well, I'm glad that everyone is here. IIW is next week, and so we will not be having this particular call as it lands right smack in the middle. It is technically before IIW starts, but there's travel and hassle and it's a lot. So we will not be having this call. And then on the following week, so 2 weeks from today, we'll we'll have a quick review of what happened there as it relates to Aries and the stuff going on there. So that's good. Also, the Hyperledger Member Summit further on in October in San Francisco and Tokyo simultaneously. Any other announcements we should have on the list? All right, do any of our projects want to share status or work updates?
Sam?
Yeah.
I suppose Picos are not really an Aries project, certainly not under the Hyperledger umbrella. But I would like to point out that Picos now are natively DIDCOM v2 speakers. And as a result, we're not abandoning completely the term Acapico because it has a nice ring to it. But depending on where it is located, an agent, a Pico that is functioning as an agent might either be in the cloud or on the edge.
Cool.
So,
that is fantastic.
And on a personal note, I will probably not be attending this meeting much longer. I'm shifting my attention to the DIDCOM users group.
Wherever you can be involved, Bruce, we are grateful.
Thank you, Sam.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other updates folks want to share?
Oh, I suppose I have to mention as well that for the community coordinated update to abandon unqualified DIDs, we're just deprecating them. So we're not going to move.
That's one way out of the problem.
Yes, that's the way out we've chosen.
Right. All right, Stephen.
From an Octopi front, 10.2 and 10.3 have been released. 10.3 adding an upgrade for older ones, and we're now targeting our next release. I believe we're going to try to include both did rotate and peer did 4 if even if things are, in pre-spec form, if you will, just because we want to get those in there in the release and get some experience in using them. So those are kind of the plans there. Yeah, so that's the latest.
Did I get the notes correct here?
It'll be 011 on deck. It'll definitely be an upgrade. Yeah.
A minor. There we go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Very cool.
I can.
We'll talk about this briefly later, but like getting started is the right idea to move as fast as we can towards stabilizing stuff. So we don't anticipate changes, but knowledge from implementations is pretty important. So thank you on scheduling that. Timo.
Yeah, I wanted to also raise a status update, but I was switching between my phone and laptop. But we participated in the Jobs for the Future Plugfest, which we built on Aries with JavaScript in our Paradigm wallet. I'll post a video of it in the Slack of our submission. But I think one thing we have done now is we have done it with OpenID and W3C credentials. They did allow DITCOM, but they couldn't provide a DITCOM like test issuer / verifier to test against. So I think for next time, it would be really cool if we can spin up some issuers and verifiers. I think they're mostly looking for DITCOM v2, for which no one was really ready to get one spinned up soon enough. But for the next Plugfest, we can, as a community, see if we can put up some DITCOM v2 issuers and verifiers, so people can also start interop testing for Plugfest against the DITCOM stuff. Because I think we were hoping to do DITCOM, but then in the end we had to do a lot more work to get that also, like all the infrastructure up. But I think it would be cool for us if we participate in it, because there's a lot of people from the CHAPI community, from the OpenID, different credential formats, and if we can also get some DITCOM stuff in there, I think then it makes like the picture complete with all the popular exchange protocols.
Fantastic. Do you happen to know when the next one is? Is this a 6-month or a 1-year thing?
I don't know, actually. It's the first one we participated in, so I wouldn't know. I'll look into
So good. Thank you for doing that. And then I think that getting that on the schedule for just to highlight the fact that it's happening, I think would be really excellent. So very cool. Stephen, did you have a comment? Okay. So awesome. Any other updates from projects?
Hi. So for Aries VCX, we have just released 0.15.9.1 version, which contains the migration from VDR tools / Indie wallet to VDR tools / Indie based credentials wallet to Credex based wallet. So we'll be dropping VDR tools / Indie in the next release, 0.60. We are also now implementing support for the V2 protocols of issuance and verification, presentation and issuance, and planning to continue with the DPIR 4 version 4 this week probably, and then hopefully land that in AATH, which we already have pretty much ready, just been waiting for this period version 4 to stabilize a bit.
Nice. We'll have some cool stuff later in the meeting on that. Very cool. Thank you, Patrick. Other updates? Nice. I love the sound of updates in the morning. That's pretty great. Okay. Here's what I have on the agenda. I've highlighted that there's a couple things to review here, but the really interesting bit is here, although there's a really cool browser resolver demo. I don't see Daniel present, so I will go ahead and share this on his behalf. But if you want some excitement, go ahead and click this link early. And then I don't know that we're going to get to it today, but there's also a DIDCOM, the DIDCOM demo that we showed has had a pile of its issues fixed and is now on demo.didcom.org. And I'll be using that during a sort of a DIDCOM 101 session at IIW to sort of demonstrate what's going on there. Notably missing is what in the heck is this explanation, but that's in the plan for later this week. Any adjustments we want to make to our Patrick? We hadn't yet got to the discussion points you wanted to have about the V2 protocols. Are you prepared to talk about that today?
Yeah, maybe actually. Yeah, last week I skipped and I didn't really prepare this week. There's a GitHub issue I created in the RFCs repos, which kind of address what I wanted to get out there. And I didn't realize that there's actually already V3 version of the issuance and verification protocols, although only in the proposal state. So perhaps it might be relevant if that is still open for change. Perhaps it's something worth considering. The point is the point being here of the big chunk I wrote there is basically I'm questioning the multi-format / batch property of the protocol, if it's useful, if it's being implemented somewhere. And then the second thing that's more of a side thing just dropped in my eye is the payments decorator. Just wondering what people think about it, if these things should stay or if it's something open for discussion.
Awesome. I apologize for not having hit this in the last bit. I don't always make it to all of the repos issues and things, and I didn't see this. So that's definitely linked there. And I think there's some fantastic discussion here. So let's hit this in just a second. Before we do that, Alex, is there anything that you wanted to share from a marketing perspective?
Nothing from our side. Work continues, apart from to say that the regular meeting every month that we have is getting, I think, even more interesting and wider scopes. People want to talk about more strategic elements of how we position Aries, then please come along and contribute. Nothing happens without the community's buy-in, of course, but there's some good discussions happening, so please join us. Thank
you, Alex. Okay, so there's a couple issues here. And Stephen, you may help me refresh my brain on this particular thing, but from the batch issuance was designed, and I may be confusing this here, please correct me if I am, but the batch issuance was designed for the issuance of multiple credentials of the same format, not necessarily the same credential in different formats.
No, yes, sorry. The original feature allowed for multiple credentials, different format, same data. And then the 2.1 feature that was added was multiple credentials of the same format but different data. So that second use case, so the first use case is I want my education credential, but I want to get it in a non-creds and JSON LD data integrity proof format. So two attachments, same data, but two different credential formats.
Right.
That's the core feature that was in V1 and in V, or I don't know if it was in V1, but it was certainly in the core of V 2.0. 2.1 then added the ability to say, I have multiple bank accounts, issue me a credential for each of the bank accounts, same a non-creds type or same JSON LD type for each one, but a different set of data for each.
Right. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, so we had the multi-credential types originally just by including multiple attachments simultaneously.
Yeah.
2.1 added the concept of batch issuance for scenarios where there were a large number of credentials and we needed to provide enough hooks might not be the right word, but enough features that the user experience for multiple credentials could be handled a little bit more elegantly. And I think this gets to your question here, Patrick, where you mentioned that, so starting in reverse, the machine-to-machine scenarios, you don't really need to use batch. You can actually just handle them all separately because it's going to be machine logic processing it. And up here in the human-involved scenarios, the UX can be easier to reason about if every credential is viewed and acknowledged by the user separately rather than forcing the user to check, repurpose, accept, and deny a whole set of credentials. The issue here was that we were exploring scenarios where you might have a literal deluge of credentials issued, and having the user separately process each one would be intractable. A good example, let's say, is I am graduating from university. So in addition to a degree credential, the university may issue me a credential for each course that I have completed, where the credential is focused on each individual course. And so I would have like 30 of them that arrived, and the ability to present them as a batch means that the user is capable of hitting like an accept all button because they recognize that all of those credentials are very similar in nature rather than needing to evaluate each one of them. I think that was the intent of the batch processing from the human involved scenario. I think I agree with you here, and then machine to machine is less important, but in the human involved scenario that would be an important piece of it. Does that make sense, Patrick, or am I confused?
Yeah, it does make sense. So I'm just wondering. Oh, okay. So there's like two variations, right? So either it's the same data, multiple credential formats, or it's the same credential formats, multiple credentials. Maybe I have to reread the RFC. I was under the impression that the RFC kind of allows for any combination, essentially even, 3 credentials, each different data and each different credential, but I might be wrong. I might just have missed that.
It's possible. The 2.1, and we kind of talked about that scenario. One is same data, multiple credentialed, and then the 2.1 batch feature is the same format but different credentials, kind of oriented around a purpose. We talked about the possibility of mixing those, where you could do kind of both combined at the same time, and it got really complicated really fast. So yes. The other thing that I'll mention here is that the V3 versions of these protocols, the timeline was weird in the sense that V3 got created for the Wacky PEX effort, and the V3 was the closest adaptation possible of the V2 protocols, but changed to handle the different attachment formats in DIDCOM V2. The problem that happened is that 2.1 and 2.2 of the credential protocols happened after V3 was actually created. So there's definitely something needed to either add those additional features if we want to carry them forward to the version 3 of the protocol, or do something so that we can kind of move forward in a clean way. And so that is an open sort of topic of discussion that has not yet been resolved.
I see. All right. Thank you for clarification.
Yeah, it's clarifying as it can be. So one of the things that I will mention is that, and I brought this up over in the DIDCOM users group, is that I think it's a good time right now to sort of consider what's next for the DIDCOM related issuance and presentation protocols, and it was suggested there that we have that some initial discussion in sort of a working session at IIW, and so I'm planning that. And the general topic that's pretty wide open is what's next for these protocols. with the idea that we want to gather ideas of a variety of things. One of the topics certainly is how to handle the two dot or the .1 and the .2 release of version 2 as it relates to version 3, but also other things like could we clarify simplified flows for credential types that don't need it. If you actually don't need to negotiate, for example, a link secret, then there are simpler flows that are possible. And we've talked about that in generalities, but sort of formalizing that I think would be really good. Other useful efforts would be recognizing or when present already, or defining the actual envelope formats for different credential types like ISO MDL or SD-JOTS or these other things, so that we actually produce more clear documentation about how you can pass all those credentials through the credential formats in the DIDCOM world. And so there's a variety of topics, including like maybe stuff that already works, but just is not very documented, and what type of documentation we can produce that would make that easier to understand. So I anticipate both a conversation at IAW as in sort of a working session type manner. Also, I think we're going to take the notes from that and use that to start some sort of regular attention given to those protocols. And it might be, rather than sort of one big summit where we all talk, for 2 days, we actually have like a once a month type of a topic session that addresses that particular issue. We can talk about what we think might work best in the community, but I think that would be a good effort in specifically working on the DIDCOM v2 side of things, not really trying to come back to DIDCOM v1 related protocols, but what we want to do in DIDCOM v2 to add some focus there, and that'll help that to be in order when as we do our migration in this community from DIDCOM v1 to DIDCOM v2. Sorry, that was a lot of words.
If I may, just one more question. So, what's the current state of the v3 issuance and verification protocol? I see it's in a proposal state. So, is it still open for further modification and adjustments for the to accommodate DIDCOM v2 and whatever changes we want to do retrospectively, perhaps, or how is it, or do we expect v4?
The status is probably wrong in the sense that the status of v3 in the sense that it's been linked to from WackyPEX, so the folks that have been targeting that have been using that. So it probably needs its status changed, and then we work on something new. Maybe it's 3 dot something, or maybe it's actually 4, depending on how extensive the changes that we are planning. But that's definitely. One of those two things will happen. I think that changing v3 without a minor update is probably not a good idea, given how long that's been out there, and has been the thing that has been linked to by WackyPEX as the protocols to do it, or Wacky DIDCOM, I think, that ended up getting renamed. So yeah, that's what I think. Although that needs a community poll to see what folks think about it.
All right, thank you a lot.
So before we move along, I'd love to touch on this real quick. The having a protocol to manage payments, and is anything more that you want to say about that? You kind of brought up the topic here, but I was just kind of curious if you had thoughts in your head about how to accomplish that.
Yeah, not much more than what I wrote. It's just by intuition, I feel like it could be a protocol on its own to, payments is a big thing, and feel like it's kind of squashed in, but it might be a lot bigger. There might be different ways how to deal with payments. I imagine it kind of treating it similarly like when you in order to issue credential, you sometimes want to request a presentation first. So same way, perhaps when you want to issue credential, you might request a payment first in some sort of sub protocol, but just at the idea level, nothing concrete.
It's been an idea in my head for a long time, but also nothing concrete. The idea that I had, and I think this is what you're getting after, is that rather than inventing some new payment thing, what we would instead do is design the protocols to facilitate payment, meaning you'd pass whatever was necessary to make it happen. So whether it was Bitcoin or a credit card or an ACH transfer or something else, you could have a protocol that would coordinate the necessary payment information and confirmation of that, which I think would be pretty cool. So yeah, cool. Okay. So very cool, and I'm looking forward to the discussions we have next week on this, and as well as following weeks online. I'm sure that we will not conclude the conversation at IW, but rather just get it started. Okay, so next up is our ongoing efforts to drop unqualified DIDs. DID rotation and DID Peer 4, we have heard from folks that are beginning implementations of that, and that is the goal, so that we can learn them. We can make that happen. They are anticipated as stable-ish now, but we want to inform the spec with some implementations to make sure that if there's important things that we don't have to do some other version bump. So that's why they're sitting as they are. And Daniel, you showed up. I was planning to show this. Is that okay with you?
Yep.
So there's a link. This is the link that's in the thing. Daniel, do you want to talk, or should I attempt to summarize?
I can give a quick summary. So I with DID Peer 4. There's some encodings for objects within the DID that are less commonly supported, like within browser or on the command line, like doing a multi-base decode and then doing a base 58 decode. Not quite as accessible as doing like a base 64 decode. So in order to help with just quickly parsing and reading out DIDs, I put together this tool where you can either paste in a DID and it will decode the input document and also present the resolved long form and short form. You can also go the other way and start with an input document, and it will generate the DID from the input document and present the same the resolved documents for those as well. And it will update live. Yeah.
So I changed stuff over here. You can see it changes stuff over here, and then here is the changed long form, with the of course the new information, and then this doesn't show it yet here, but the point of DID 4 is that there's both a full form, which is here, and then there's also the short form, which actually only goes up to this point here, and that's substantially shorter. And that's the point, is that this DID Peer 4 has both non-lossy encoding of a DID document, which was one of the issues with 2, but also has a built-in short form that can be used after the initial exchange, and you've confirmed that the other party is capable and ready for that. There's a little bit of a longer discussion about how to detect that the other side is capable of using the short form. I don't know if we want to have that here right now. But that's definitely an open topic for discussion that we've been considering, including the fact that it may be good to support DID Peer 4 on agents that are not capable of storing DID documents, static agents and the like, which means that that it may be we have different signals that indicate that the other party is capable of handling the short form and what the expectations are. That's one of the anticipated, clarifications to the spec that would be nice before it actually gets merged. So that's going on there. Any questions about DID Peer 4 or this awesome work Daniel did? I hear stunned silence, Daniel.
Nice.
Okay, got some thumbs up. Very cool. Is this, looking at the repo name, is there a TypeScript implementation behind this?
So there is. I will be the first to admit that I am not a native TypeScript or JavaScript developer, so there's probably some stuff about that, the TypeScript implementation that's a little quirky. I did attempt to do it in such a way that it's separate from like the actual site presentation code here. So I'm not sure it's really in a usable state externally. If you'd like to contribute and help it achieve that state, I'm more than happy to welcome contributions to it. Otherwise, it's there as a reference as well. So that's
So here, this is the implementation, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. And then that of course is used by the site to make that happen.
right.
Is this published as a package yet, or not quite?
It is not published as a package at this point. Yeah.
Okay, but the code does exist.
Yep.
Nice. Well done, Daniel. Okay, so the big, I think nearly everything is resolved here. We need to talk about how to get tests for this into the Aries agent test harness, but that's less controversial, just work that needs to be done. The one big hanging open issue is the DID exchange with no document signature issue that was brought up. So here's the original issue that was brought up and discussed. And let me see if I've got everything current here. So the last thing after this discussion that I did was actually create a PR here, and I've updated some features as described, and then answered a request here. But this is probably the biggest sort of consensus thing that we have in front of us, and so I wanted to bring it up here today to talk about it. And here's the idea. If you are not attaching a DID document in order to prove provenance with the previous key and the signature across the DID document, that you can do that with an attachment that actually references the base64 encoded DID itself to make that happen. And the idea, so there's the description. Of course, here's an example, and I have additional language here. And when it should be included, et cetera, so that we can sort of plug up this particular issue. Any thoughts, comments, folks that want to take a look at this but haven't seen it yet, and want to indicate that they're ready to do, that they need to take a look. This is going to be pretty important to have resolved prior to getting our move to DIDCOM v2, which of course doesn't have the same DID exchange protocol needs. And so this is kind of an important step on the path to make sure that as we translate away from the unqualified or DID docs passed in line, that this could work unconsensus. Sorry, Warren. I apologize for my bad English. Any thoughts, questions? Are there any concerns or people that think this might be dumb and or the wrong way to do it and want more time to look at it? So the other big thing is this adds something that is optional to the DID exchange protocol. And so the PR does not include a version bump, which is weird, but I was trying to be, that's abnormal. Normally an addition like this would incur a dot release of the protocol. The reason I didn't is because I was trying to be as gentle as possible and make the implementation as easy as possible for folks that need to adopt this. So given that attachments can be ignored anyway, and the protocol is to ignore additional information you're not expecting in a DIDCOM message, I'm wondering if it's possible to get away with not having a dot release of this protocol in order to simplify and streamline the adoption of it. Opinions on that?
I think like the current state the protocol was a bit flawed because it just didn't handle this. you say it's a should, and that's not a must. So you could see it as like, if you don't support it according to DITCOM protocol standards, you have to ignore the property. And then you would be in a scenario where you can resolve the DIT. And I think if you don't use a different key than was used in the invitation, then it's fine. Because then the message itself authenticates the DIT. But if it is, like in a previous version, you couldn't make the verification. And I'm curious if people have implemented the flow where you do rotate and just not verify it, because that would be a yeah, well, it could be a security issue, because you can't verify that the DIT rotation is trusted. So I think it depends a bit on that. Like, do we assume that current implementations just have never implemented this flow because it was flawed? Or do we assume people have implemented it incorrectly? And in that case, we should take it more seriously, I think.
So one thing to add is that this says a should. I think I already have language in the community coordinated update. The community coordinated update can be more opinionated about this, meaning that can say, even though it's optional in the protocol, you must do it to comply with the community coordinated update. And that was my gentle way of skirting around not needing a dot release on this, but still making sure that we all do this as a community. As we're making this change, and again, this is on the way to DIDCOM v2 transition, which means it's less it's not a super long-term thing ideally, but I suspect, I'd love to hear from folks. I suspect most folks are actually not doing that confirmation, which means this is important to fix. But I'm unsure of the best sort of community lever that we have to pull in order to help the correct behavior and the right verifications to occur.
Yeah, because I think both AFJ and EKPI have not implemented this flow, because in AFJ, I think we ran into this issue. That's also why an issue was opened and then we just left it. And in EKPI, it is supported to create connections with a public DIT, but the actual connection that is afterwards created is always a peer DIT. So you can include the DIT document, which you can then sign, if I'm correct. I don't know if it has not. Yeah, I think Daniel also said it now. It's implemented like this. Yeah.
So to clarify, I think what I meant to, like, more clear of what I said is that it hasn't really been implemented to not pass a DID document. In which case, though it's also correct that no one has done the signature checking, it just hasn't really been done because everyone's passing the DID document in line. And so this move to DID Peer 4 is what's actually raising this issue or applying pressure on this particularly underspecified section of this protocol. Warren.
So this is really only relevant for the transition, or do we see this did rotate being an ongoing thing? Like, if I'm getting a little bit confused. There's already a mechanism in DIDCOM v2, right?
For did rotate, yes.
Okay, so this is simply a transition to get us to DIDCOM v2, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. All right. I guess my primary concern is that if an implementation detail is in a community coordinated update directive, and somebody is coming to this to look later after that process is concerned to implement a protocol, and the protocol isn't clear about what's supposed to happen, then you end up with something incompatible or not correct. And in this case, perhaps it doesn't matter because it's just transitory anyways. But so I'm kind of overall, I'm kind of, if it wasn't transitory, I would probably be more hard-headed about this. Like, I think the protocol should be prescriptive about what it is and not leave the details somewhere else. But because it's transitory, then, maybe that's okay.
And that's where my mind was, is that if this was to be clear, so Timo says it also concerns creating connections with non-peer DIDs, but it only concerns creating connections with non-peer DIDs in the DID exchange protocol, which is not used in DIDCOM v2. So there's a handful of issues colliding in a beautiful storm here, in the sense that that we have this issue that is an issue now and that we need to properly handle, but but in the transition to DIDCOM v2, the use of this protocol is going to die entirely, because connections, the connection mechanics are one of the significant things to change in DIDCOM v2, and it doesn't have this issue because of the way that the rotation is handled. So, so Timo, you're right. This isn't just a DID peer 4 issue. It's also a resolvable DID issue. So non-peer DIDs are also affected by this. Those are in less rotation rather than more rotation, at least in sort of the deployments I'm aware of Akapai, for example. And so this is an important thing to do, but it's not something that we're deciding here that's going to carry over to DIDCOM v2. It's already solved in DIDCOM v2. We just need to get there.
Yeah, no, I just want to mention it because it was actually like at some point we wanted to support like non-DID peer DIDs in DID exchange, and then we thought it would be like simple, but then we ran into this, and it's actually what's preventing us from having connections with DID exchange in AFJ based on non-peer DIDs.
Right. So thank you for highlighting that. So to ask the question again, are we okay merging this as is without a version bump and handling the weirdness as Warren described really well? Or should we follow our strict rules about producing a minor version bump to add something optional into the protocol? Timo votes for a minor release bump to the protocol. Did I understand that correct?
Yeah, it's because like a while ago we have like changed how we handle protocol messages in AFJ, because we only supported like exact versions. But the protocols describe like if you have like everything in the major version you could handle, but if it's a higher version, there may be properties that you can ignore. But because all new properties like are optional, because otherwise it would be a major change, this would work, I think, fine. It's just that newer implementations wouldn't be able to know to process the DDoC attach. But if you are not aware of that, then you can still use the old flow, which I think it achieves what we want. If you do support this property, you can support a new minor version. Otherwise, you just use the old flow. But it doesn't require, with like a major change, usually a whole new protocol implementation.
Excellent description. Do we have opinions from Akapai developers or VCX developers about a dot release here, which is being proposed by Timo? So to be clear, it would raise the version of DID exchange to I think it's 1.1, and the 1 dot release would be the addition of the DID rotate attachment. Yeah, 1.1.
So speaking from Akapai, I'm kind of the opinion that if we're not handling the minor version changes well, it's probably something we should fix anyways. So I haven't looked at it recently, so I don't know what it's looking like, but ideally we're able to handle minor and still accept the major. But again, if that's a problem, I think we need to fix it, as opposed to letting that determine whether it's a dot release or not, I guess.
So that sounds like a vote for the dot release.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any VCX opinions?
Yeah, so as I noted in chat, so we are just adding DID exchange now, so we don't really mind, it can be 2.1, 1.1, and we don't mind. And conceptually, regardless of that, of what's our status, I think the arguments for the 1.1 make sense.
Okay, everyone's voting 1.1. I'm going to note that here, and then I will go ahead and make that change. 23, 10, 4. Are there any other changes that folks would like to see happen before we merge this PR and then target that for development? Okay, I will do that, and I will do that pre-IW, and that way it's ready to go there, and the VCX folks can target that for new development, and so that is good. So good. I consider that to be resolved. Then I'll go ahead and get that PR in there, and we can get that merged, and that will give us the that'll tidy up that last little unknown or unresolved unconsensus piece that is not part of the regular plan here, and so that's fantastic. Good. Are there? We mentioned this last time. There's a new Indicio has a new public mediator in beta that has WebSocket support, so that you can connect to the WebSocket and receive messages while you're connected to the WebSocket. It can be delivered live as part of that. I wanted to bring that up. Are there other topics that we want to talk about? Otherwise, because I think it's so awesome, I'm kind of tempted to run a public demo of the didcom.org demo for DidCom if we don't have other topics.
I had one thing I wanted to bring up, and I hate to get in the way of the demo, but the did peer 2 corrections and clarifications PR that I raised a bit ago, I was hoping to give that at least a minute or two of airtime.
Let's do that.
The did peer 2 specification had some things that were a little ambiguous, so I've gone through and attempted to provide as much clarification and help resolve some of the consistency issues that we're experiencing across libraries as people have implemented according to differing understandings of the specification. The big one, as Sam's highlighted there, is how we should generate IDs for services and verification methods, with the verification methods I think being the bigger of the two of those. In my PR as it stands, I've proposed doing it in the did key style of just putting the full multi-base encoded value of the key itself. There have been a couple of alternative proposals, the other being doing what was more or less in the examples of the original spec, which was the multi-base encoding, but without the Z from the front of the multi-base. And then the other one being just having incrementing key -1, key -2, key -3, and so on for each of the keys, just according to the order that they appear in the did. So given that we have a couple of conflicting opinions on that, I proposed the did key method of doing the full multi-base. I don't have a problem with that. I also don't have a problem with just doing the simple thing and just incrementing, just key -1, 2, 3, and so on. Yeah, let's see. So do we have strong opinions on that, anyone?
I should notice that the DidCom v2 mediator testing stuff that exists makes the assumption that Daniel has gone to here, meaning the full key thing instead of named any other way. And so this follows that group of software packages as sort of like what the assumption was, but then codifies it in a clarification of the spec. So we believe, right, Daniel, that this follows the majority opinion of the community as to the assumption on the unclarified portion. I
am not sure on that, actually. I don't recall what the test suite, the DidCom v2 mediator test suite used. It's too bad that Fabio is not on the call to speak up on that point. but Fabio is in favor of the incrementing numbers as opposed to the multi-base key. So I think what I've proposed here is probably not actually implemented anywhere. I think the only thing that has been implemented is what Timo pointed out of the multi-base minus the Z on the front of the multi-base.
Right. So Fabio is the mediator test suite. It looks like he's in favor of the key enumeration piece. Timo, any opinions that you can share with us off the cuff?
No, I just never knew that it was like not specifically specified in the spec. I think we just took these from like examples that were in the spec. I think I'm fine with either approach, but if there was already something suggested in examples or wherever I need to look specifically where I got them, then I would be in favor of not changing it because it would break things that are already existing.
Normally, I would agree with that. However, it seems that every implementation has done it slightly differently. So it's, even though there were examples, and even though I think the example is consistent with how AFJ has implemented it, regardless of what we point out as clarification within the spec, there's going to be breaking changes to an implementation somewhere. So I kind of feel like it's a little bit more of a wash which direction we go. So I don't feel strongly about following what was in the original examples.
I should also clarify that the fact that this is a problem is my fault. I wrote did peer 2 and underspecified this piece because I wasn't thinking about the key references at the time. And so I'm sorry, everyone, and thank you for Daniel for finding and helping to clean up the mess that I created. Okay, so Daniel, thank you for giving that some airtime and bringing that up. That's pretty important. So excellent. So bring this to resolution and getting this merged, I think, as soon as we can reasonably do it would be good so that we can converge implementations since something's going to have to change no matter what. Being able to converge those sooner rather than later, I think, would be important. Anything else, Daniel?
No, I think that's it. Thanks.
Okay, we have just 4 minutes. Let's pull this off. This is a participation demo. If you go to demo.didcom.org and hang on. Oh, it just took a second. I'm going to copy a did out of here and I'm going to paste it in the meeting chat. If you copy it out of the meeting chat and then hit new contact and add it here and then hit save, then it will create a connection with this very simple DIDCOM capable piece of software running in my browser, and it will make that happen. You can also notice that you can change the name up here, and the names will be useful via a profile message, and to make that work. So here's Ivan and Daniel. And these are updating live, and so there is as mentioned last time, there is a mediator involved, and we are connected to one that is WebSocket capable, which like streams stuff in. If I then click in, here are messages that have passed back and forth, including the display name that has been passed. There's a feature disclosure that's happened, and there is there's an implementation of a basic message here as well that can send stuff back and forth. So that you can see what's happening. And so there's a message back from Timo. On the right-hand side, you can actually see all of the messages that are passing back and forth here. Right now, it shows everything for all of the contacts and the mediator together. But those are the types of things that are coming across there. So here's a message from Ivan, and so that's passing back and forth. There's also a repository behind this with open source code that you can see how this was done. But the point here is to be able to talk openly and help this stuff to happen. You can see that it shows the peer before the profile message passes back and forth. And then you get to see the messages that are both sent and received from here. And so you can see that here, for example, here's a trust ping that was sent as well. This is pre-populated here. And I don't know who sent me the trust ping, but here you go from Stephen. There's a couple of updates we're going to make to this. One is making this a little bit simple to link to the documentation. It currently works right now, but it looks ugly and it has and stuff. And so anyway, there's some minor changes to improve here. But the idea is that this is a very sort of group-friendly way of explaining DIDCOM and helping those things to happen and show the mechanics of how DIDCOM actually works without any software installs or anything. So N asks in the chat, this is minorly unrelated here, is there a minimal set of protocols RFCs that would be expected of a new Aries pure implementation for interoperability with current stable implementations? The Aries interop profile 2.0 is the current interop profile that has been targeted by many in our community, and that's probably the best way to start there. So if we search this up, this is 302, and if you scroll down here, there is both Aries Interop 1 and Aries Interop 2 that start as a nice way to do it. So anyway, with that, here's the demo. This is hosted. It will change, but you're free to use this to explain or to play with or whatever else. And if you have ideas, there is a repo. We don't yet have it linked here, but there's a repo behind this that we're tracking issues and other stuff like that. So the goal of this, of course, is not to be a full agent. You'll notice that it does not do any verifiable credential protocol related stuff. This is just the demo of DIDCOM itself. And part of it is that we wanted to help people understand what it was really like as easy as possible. Without having them to install or run code or whatever else. And so the work, all of the blame for this goes to Daniel and to Colton on the NDCO team and Micah on the NDCO team. They've done a fantastic job putting this together to make that happen. So very cool. One of the other things that you notice is that we rigged it so that if you actually change your name, it'll push out to all of the contacts. You'll see I just sent a pile of messages. It just sent out profile name changes, and my name will have changed on your contact list if you were looking at it as part of that. So it kind of shows the dynamic nature of that, and we're using the user profile protocol that's defined on didcom.org to do that. So anyway, very cool. And I'll be showing this as part of the DIDCOM 101 session to try and help people understand different pieces of DIDCOM and what's actually used here. So anyway, such a fun demo. You can also do things like disconnect from the WebSocket temporarily, have other people send you messages, reconnect, and you'll see the messages arrive that showed up at the mediator while you were disconnected, as an example of mediators on offline devices. So very cool, lots of work to be done to this, but it's at a pretty great state. And with that, thanks, folks. I'm grateful that you're here, and we will hopefully see a bunch of you at IW, and the rest of you, we will talk soon on this and other meetings. Thanks for coming today.